Hi, today we will be reading a chapter from the book Focus for Class 5. The name of the chapter is Be Prepared, and it is written by Ruskin Bond. I was a Boy Scout once. Be prepared, that's the Boy Scout motto. But I never seemed to be well prepared for anything. So, how did I survive as a Boy Scout? In the very first paragraph, we find Ruskin Bond is writing something or sharing information about himself, especially during the time when he was in school. So during his school days, he was a Boy Scout. And the Boy Scout had a motto. What is that? That is to be prepared or be ready for anything at all time. But contrary to what is expected from the boys who were the member of this organization, Ruskin Bond was anything but well prepared at any time. Next, he asks us the question that about exactly what the trick he had or exactly what did he do to survive as a Boy Scout. Boy Scout is a member of an international organization of young boys. Now these boys in this organization receives many kinds of lessons like practical skills through various adventurous activities and outdoor activities. It is expected that these boys who are the member of the Boy Scout should be responsible and always be prepared. You will find a word here, motto. What is motto? Motto is nothing but a small sentence or phrase that expresses the aims and beliefs of a person, a group, or organization. In this chapter, it is an organization that is a Boy Scout, and the motto of the Boy Scout is Be Prepared. Now we go to the second paragraph. Well, it seems a rumor had gone around the junior school that I was a good cook. I had never cooked anything in my life, but of course, I had spent a lot of time in the tuck shop making suggestions and advising Chimpu, who ran the tuck shop, and encouraging him to make more and better samosas, jalebis, tikkis, and pakoras. For my unwanted advice, he would favor me with an occasional free samosa. So naturally, I looked upon him as a friend. With this qualification, I was given a cookery badge and put in charge of our troops' supply of rations. When Ruskin Bond was in his junior school, there was a rumor about him that he was a good cook. In other words, he is a person who can cook well. But in reality, he never ever cooked any dish. This is a very honest confession that Ruskin Bond makes here. But definitely there were other experiences or qualifications that he had that made him the cook in the troop. So let us know what is that. Ruskin Bond had a friend whose name is Chimpu. He owned a tuck shop. What is a tuck shop? A tuck shop is a small shop in a school that sells snacks. And Chimpu, being the cook of the tuck shop, often made dishes like samosas, jalebis, tikkis, and pakoras. And Ruskin Bond would often come forward and suggest him about these dishes. In other words, he would suggest him how to make these dishes more tasty and better. For these unwanted advices that he would often give to his friend Chimpu, Chimpu would then favor him with free samosas, but not on regular basis, but occasionally. So naturally, Ruskin Bond loved him as a friend and looked upon him as a friend. This was the qualification that that earned him a cookery badge and also made him the one responsible for the troops' supply of rations. Now we come to the next paragraph. There were about 20 of us in our troop. During the summer break, our scoutmaster, Mr. Oliver, took us on a camping expedition to Tara Devi, a few miles outside Shimla. That first night, we were put to work, peeling potatoes, skinning onions, shelling peas, and pounding masalas. These various ingredients are ready. I was asked, as the troop cookery expert, what should be done with them. In this paragraph, we come to know some more information about the troop. There were 20 boys in the troop, and it was during the summer break that they were taken to an expedition by their scoutmaster, Mr. Oliver. And they were taken to Tara Devi, a place that was a few miles outside Shimla, that is in Himachal Pradesh. During the first night, they were given some work. And what was that? They were asked to peel the potatoes, that is to remove the skin of the potatoes, then skinning the onions, removing the first layer of the skin of the onions, shelling the peas, that is removing the pea pods from the pea, and finally pounding the masalas. These various ingredients, once they were ready, everyone asked Ruskin Bond as what should be done. Because he was the one responsible for taking care of the rations and cooking, therefore everyone asked him. Here you find a word that is expedition. What is expedition? Expedition is a long journey that is taken for a particular purpose. Put everything in that big dekchi, I ordered. Pour half a tin of ghee over the lot, add some nettle leaves and cook for half an hour. When this was done, everyone had a taste, but the general opinion was that the dish lacked something. So once everyone were ready with the ingredients that were required for cooking, Ruskin Bond instructed them to put everything in a big dekchi. What is a dekchi? A dekchi is nothing but a cooking pot that has a wide bottom. So next time you go to the kitchen, do not forget to ask your mother to show you which is a dekchi in the kitchen. Followed by this instruction, Ruskin Bond then asked one of the members to pour half a tin of ghee over the lot, over the vegetables and the masalas that were placed inside the dekchi or into the dekchi. Then he instructed to add some nettle leaves. What are nettle leaves? Nettle leaves are the leaves of a wild plant which are mostly used in foods and medicines. And the next instruction by Ruskin Bond was to cook this entire thing for half an hour, that is for 30 minutes. Once the cooking is over, everyone was given a small amount to taste. After tasting the food, the general opinion was that particular dish lacked something. That means it was short of something. More salt, I suggested. More salt was added. It still lacked something. Ruskin Bond was the first one to suggest. What did he say? He said that you should add more salt, and thus more salt was added, and still it was lacking something. Add a cup of sugar, I ordered. Sugar was added to the concoction, but it still lacked something. So once the salt is over, the next instruction was to add a cup of sugar. Now sugar was added to this mixture. What is concoction? Concoction is an unusual mixture. So whatever they were preparing, Bond asked one of the individual responsible in this kitchen along with him to add some sugar. But still there was something lacking in the dish. Poor Mr. Oliver, he wasn't really cut out to be a scoutmaster. The following day, he told us he would give us a lesson in tracking. Taking a half-hour start, he walked into the forest, leaving behind him a trail of broken twigs, feathers, pine cones, and chestnuts. We were to follow the trail until we found him. In this paragraph, we find Ruskin Bond is sharing an opinion about his scoutmaster, Mr. Oliver. According to Bond, the scoutmaster is really not suitable to be a scoutmaster. In other words, he does not have the skill to be a scoutmaster. The next day, that is the day after Bonvujia was cooked, he wanted to teach the troops about trekking. He wanted to give them a lesson in trekking. He began his journey half an hour before and he walked into the forest. He decided to leave behind him a trail of some certain things that are found in the forest so that the boys can reach him simply following the trails. And what are the things that he had used? Broken twigs, feathers, pine cones, and chestnuts. Ruskin Bond and the troop, are supposed to follow the trail until they reach Mr. Oliver. Now the next paragraph. Unfortunately, we were not very good trackers. We did follow Mr. Oliver's trail some way into the forest, but then we were distracted by a pool of clear water. It looked very inviting. Abandoning our uniforms, we jumped into the pool and had a great time romping about or just lying on its grassy banks and enjoying the sunshine. According to Bond, he and his team, that is the Boy Scouts, were not very good trackers. Yet they decided to follow the trail that Mr. Oliver had left behind, but were soon distracted by a pool of clear water. And it was so inviting that they couldn't leave behind the idea of not enjoying a bath. They decided to abandon the uniforms, that is, to remove the uniforms and immediately jump into the pool. They had a great time there, playing happily in the pool, or simply they lied down in the grassy bank and enjoyed the sunshine. The Boy Scouts, including Ruskin Bond, disobeyed the direct instruction of Mr. Oliver and decided to spend their time in the pool of clear water. The entire day they spent the way they wanted instead of following the trail that Mr. Oliver had left behind and was waiting in the other end of the forest. It was growing dark and we were beginning to worry about Mr. Oliver's whereabouts when he limped into the camp assisted by a couple of local villagers. So in this paragraph, we learn that the boys had returned back to the camp instead of following the trail. And since it was getting dark, they started worrying about Mr. Oliver's whereabouts, as in where he is. Then they found that he was limping back into the camp and he was assisted by some of the local villagers. I shall be reading the last line of the previous page and will then continue with this page in the screen. Having waited for us at the far end of the forest for a couple of hours, he had decided to return, following his own trail. But in the gathering gloom, he was soon lost. Village folk returning from the temple took charge and escorted him back to the camp. He was very angry and made us return all our good conduct and other badges. I had to give up my cookery badge. Mr. Oliver, who was waiting at the other end of the forest, waited patiently for a few hours with the hope that the troop will finally reach him, which in reality did not happen. So finally, when he realized that it was getting late, he decided to return back to the camp following the trail that he had made during the daytime, so that that scouts can follow him into the forest. But very soon he lost his way because it was getting dark. Since Mr. Oliver is not very aware of the forest or the route around him, he was soon lost. But there were village folks who were returning from the temple, soon found him and brought him back to the camp. And it is very natural that Mr. Oliver was very angry because the troop disobeyed his direct orders, and he ordered them to return all the badges that they had earned during this trip, including the good conduct badges. And here sadly Ruskin Bond had to also give up his cookery badge. An hour later, when we were all preparing to get into our sleeping bags for the night, Mr. Oliver called out, "Where's the dinner?" "We have had ours," said one of the boys. "Everything is finished, sir." Mr. Oliver returned to his tent in a huff. "Tomorrow, Bond will breakfast early." So an hour later, when Mr. Oliver had returned, all the boys were preparing to go back to their sleeping bags. Now, what are sleeping bags? Sleeping bags are soft and big bags which are mostly used for sleeping, especially when you go out for camping. It not only protects you during the night time, it also makes sure that no animal attacks you during the night. So Mr. Oliver, who was out all day in the forest, called out about his dinner. He wanted to know where is his dinner. One of the boys immediately replied that they had theirs and all the food is finished. And Mr. Oliver, since there was no food for him, returned back to his camp angrily. While returning, he gave an instruction to Ruskin Bond. What was it? He said, "Bond, tomorrow our breakfast will be early than usual time." But we had to break up our camp before we could do that, because in the early hours of the next morning, a bear strayed into our camp, entered the tent where our stores were kept, and created havoc with all our provisions, even rolling our biggest dekchi down the hillside. So the next morning, before they could have their breakfast, there was a chaos in that camp. What happened? A bear from the nearby forest strayed into their camp, and probably it was hungry. It immediately went into the tent or wherever the stores were kept, where all the food ingredients, food utensils were kept. And in that mess, he rolled one of the biggest dekchi down the hillside. Since it is a hilly area, probably one of the biggest dekchi by chance was pushed by him at it and it went down the hill. Now we come to the last paragraph. In the confusion and uproar that followed, the bear entered Mr. Oliver's tent. Our scoutmaster was already outside, fortunately, and came out entangled in his dressing gown. It then made off towards the forest, a comical sight in its borrowed clothes. And though we were a troop of brave little scouts, we thought it better to let the bear keep the gown. So, all of a sudden, the next morning, very early before most of the boys had woken up, a bear entered the camp and he started causing a mess. And during this time, when everyone was running around because the bear had entered the camp, the bear entered Mr. Oliver's tent, and luckily he was then outside. Mr. Oliver was not inside the camp. And after some time, we find that the bear is coming out of the camp and he was entangled in the dressing gown of Mr. Oliver. And immediately it ran off towards the forest. And it was indeed a very comical scene to see a bear wearing a dressing gown. And though this Boy Scout were brave people, but still they decided that it was better to let the bear keep the gown for himself, because there was not a single soul in the troop who was brave enough to fight the bear and get back Mr. Oliver's dressing gown. Thank you, my dear students. If you find this video to be informative and useful, then kindly subscribe my channel. I shall be putting up more videos explaining the chapters from this very book. Thank you.